magically whip up a quorum during that time, we can revert to business after. Right,
So
and it's
Caitlin
Jones. And this is taxi cabs?
Home ownership.
Oh, perfect.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me tonight. I'm joined by my colleague Akiria Brown, who is also in the housing division. So I'm just going to quickly introduce us, and then we're going to go through a quick overview of the county's homeownership study and where we are currently, and then we can open it up for questions at the end. So my name's Caitlin again. I'm a planner in the housing division in the Department of Community Planning, Housing and Development. And I am currently the coordinator for the county's first ever homeownership study. And I am joined here tonight by my colleague, Akiria Brown, who's our homeownership program specialist in the housing division. And so we're gonna talk to you a little bit about how we got here and where we are headed. So Akiria is gonna kick us off first, and then I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about the scope of the study after she's finished.
Good evening, everyone. Can you see my the slide presentation that I have here?
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. Yeah, so good evening. Again, my name is Akiria Brown, and I coordinate the county's homeownership programs. So just kind of a little bit of background. So we know that homeownership is an effective means of wealth building, and for many households, ownership represents their highest value investment, right? So the county has sought to support households that want to purchase through homebuyer education, promoting state programs, providing down payment assistance for first-time home buyers, and requiring income-restricted affordable dwelling units, or ADUs, through special exception process. However, despite these efforts, the lack of affordable homeownership options is an ongoing challenge throughout the region, really throughout the country. In addition, low and moderate income homeowners can struggle with ongoing costs associated with repairs, maintenance, and condo fees. So we take our guidance from the Affordable Housing Master Plan that was approved by the board in 2015. Our primary objectives are to prioritize the production and preservation of affordable homeownership, as well as providing initial assistance to first-time homebuyers and support older adults so that they can age in place. So the Affordable Housing Master Plan challenges us to produce and preserve a sufficient supply of affordable ownership. So the study really provides us with a basis for development of overarching and integrative approaches to homeownership throughout the county. So currently, the county provides assistance through financial assistance, financial literacy, again, down payment assistance. We also have county employee programs to purchase within the county. There's the real estate tax relief programs. And then also we offer condo education, and that's through a partnership with the City of Alexandria. Although we offer home ownership assistance to a range of home buyers and owners, currently the majority of our programs are focused on first-time home buyers with an annual income of 80% of the area median income, which for a household of four is about $113,000. So that would be the maximum. We have not seen the level of participation that we want to see in those programs. And so we are looking at ways to enhance the programs that we currently have in order to help new buyers to purchase, and then also help the existing homeowners to maintain ownership. So with that said, I will turn it back over to Caitlin, and you can go into the study concept.
Sure. So yeah,
May I,
as a
may
curator,
I ask a may I ask a question? Courtney, am
Sure.
I allowed to ask a question? Because I'm virtual? No? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. What related to your second access objective, where it says provide assistance to create access to already existing homeowners. Uh, am I reading that right? That it's for already, or this is all for first time home. Okay, let me rephrase that. Is part of this your office to help existing homeowners stay in their homes? Because what I've noticed when I've called to find out about home modifications, the county said they used to have a program to help people afford that, but that program had been discontinued. So I was wondering if that is part of your mission, if you could describe, maybe it's happening later, but how what kind of assistance you mean when you say help people stay in their homes, or maybe I just am maybe it didn't say that at all. I'm sorry.
Akiria, do you want to go to slide 6?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so right. So under existing homeowners, and you're right in that the county previously had a program for home repair, which was a grant funded program. So currently, the county does provide assistance with foreclosure prevention, counseling. There's the real estate tax relief program, and of course the condo education series. I think one of the things that we are looking at throughout this study are opportunities to possibly expand these programs, and of course a home repair program, if that would be something that the community would be calling for. I think that would be something that we would um, try to explore throughout this study process.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
So yeah, as Akira was mentioning, we're not seeing the level of participation that we would like in our programs. And there's also the issue that you just brought up, that where there might be some programs that we should be operating that we just aren't right now. So based on direction from the update to the master plan in 2020, the implementation framework directed the county to develop a new integrative approach to our homeownership programs. And so we've embarked on the homeownership study in the summer of 2022. And the key concepts of the study and what we're really looking at is to assess the key trends related to the for sale housing market, including the mortgage financing market, and also cost burden of existing owner households. We are examining the trends of our existing homeownership programs, so the programs that Akiria just went over on slide 6. We want to better define the community's values and goals as it relates to homeownership, and determine whether our existing programs are supporting those goals. We want to assess opportunities for potential homebuyers and existing homeowners, and at the end, so the culmination of the study, we want to recommend modifications to our existing programs, or potentially new programs to consider. As far as where we are, again, we launched the study in early summer 2022. We're anticipating about a 15-month process, expecting to wrap up by the fall of 2023, towards the end of the fall, probably. And again, the goal of the study is to better meet the vision and goals of the community, create better homeownership outcomes for people of color and other underserved populations, and increase available resources for existing homeowners. As far as the timeline, we are, again, it's about a 15-month process. Phase 1, we focused on data collection and analysis. And actually, Akiri, if you want to go to the next slide, I can talk a little bit about what we looked at in phase 1. So the first phase, again, was focused solely on data collection and analysis and reviewing our existing programs. So we released a report in October 2022 that looks at homeownership barriers that households are facing in the county. And the key findings from this report included that there is a sizable renter population with household incomes that could support homeownership. About half of renter households have incomes over $100,000, and an additional 8,900 renter households have incomes between $75,000 and $100,000 annually. As far as homeownership rates have actually declined over the last decade, even while the number of homeowners has increased. And this is mainly the result of the market producing mostly rental housing. And homeownership rates are significantly lower for Black, Indigenous, and people of color populations. And these disparities are closely related to lower household incomes among these demographic groups. 3/4 of the owner households in Arlington with incomes below $60,000 are housing cost burdened, meaning that more than 30% of their income is spent on housing costs. And over half of those households are paying more than 50% of their income towards housing costs. As far as the housing market, residential development over the last decade has primarily delivered mid and high-rise apartments with little added supply for homeowners. And as far as the financing market, the private financial sector is lending to moderate income households with 1/5 of all mortgages originated in 2021 for home purchases or to households with incomes under $100,000. And this suggests that the private market financing is available to households with incomes around 80% of the area median income. So there is available financing, but it's lower for some populations than others. As far as our existing programs, we also did a review of who we're currently serving and how often and who we're currently serving. And what this analysis found is that there's not a strong correlation between participation in homebuyer training programs and purchasing a new home. And that's just because there are so many hurdles to overcome in actually finding a home and qualifying for a mortgage. The average dollar amount of our purchase assistance loans has increased over time, and this correlates to higher sales prices in Arlington. And typically, our purchase assistance borrowers buy smaller one to 2 bedroom condos, and they're not buying larger 3-bedroom units. And this is largely due to this limited supply of 3-bedroom units that are affordable to borrowers. MyPop is a small program, so we average about 4 closings per year, although that has been increasing over the last couple years. But program income limits combined with rigorous mortgage criteria and costs associated with the units that individuals desire contribute to the difficulty that purchasers face when they are looking for a homeownership unit. As far as our ADU program, it's limited by the number of affordable units that are generated by the special exception site plan process. So we just don't have the availability that we think could be useful to the community. So those are the main takeaways from phase 1 of the study. And where we are now, we're sort of moving into phase 2, where the majority of our community engagement will happen during this study. And what we're looking to do is take the data and the trends that we developed in phase 1 and use that to engage the community on developing a vision and goals as it relates to homeownership support, considering the following questions. So how can Arlington's homeownership programs fulfill the county's vision? Who should our homeownership programs be serving? Are the county's existing programs meeting the needs of the community? And should the county expand its homeownership support? Again, if you go to the next slide, Akiria, this, like I mentioned before, this phase is largely where the majority of the community engagement is. We're planning for most of the community engagement to happen during this study. And this is just a summary of what we're planning to do. We've engaged the homeownership subcommittee of the Housing Commission to provide guidance to staff during the course of the homeownership study. They've been meeting about every 2 months since last fall. And the meetings are open to any member of the public and members of other commissions. So if you're interested in participating, feel free to reach out to me and I'd be happy to add you to our list. In addition to engaging the homeownership subcommittee of the Housing Commission. We're also conducting broader community outreach to support the goals of the study. So we're actually in the process of conducting roundtable meetings right now with which are small format meetings with constituents representing populations that have been underrepresented in our homeownership programs up until now. And we're also planning broader community meetings where we hope to get participation from a wide variety of individuals across the county to help develop a shared vision for homeownership support. We'll be supplementing these opportunities with online feedback opportunities and also pop-up events at various community meetings and events. So if you want to go to actually go one more slide, Akiria. Yeah, so after phase 2, once we've come to develop a shared community vision for homeownership, then we'll move into phase 3 where we will be developing the program recommendations. And this will largely be based on the community feedback and the goals that that were set during phase 2. And we hope the program recommendations will include the following. How can our programs be targeted to certain underrepresented groups? We want to look at the return on investment and financial feasibility of proposed program modifications and newly proposed programs. What are the resources that are needed to implement the proposed program modifications and new programs? Are there funding opportunities that we should be seeking to support the recommendations? How can we prioritize the recommendations? And we'll also supplement these recommendations with case studies, providing examples that demonstrate how other communities have tackled similar programs. As far as how you can get involved, again, we have a website, a homeownership study page on the county's website, and I have it linked here, and I believe Courtney has the presentation that she'll send out to you all after this meeting, and you can access it there, or you can email me and I can send it to you. You can also subscribe to our housing newsletter, where we're periodically including information about the study and next steps for how to get involved. Like I said before, you can join the Housing Commission's Homeownership Subcommittee. It's open to any members of the public and representatives from other commissions, so feel free to email me to learn more. Or if you're interested in more information about our existing homeownership programs, you can certainly email me, but your better bet would be to email Akiria Brown because she is our homeownership programs expert. And so I think that's it. I did want to leave some time for questions just in case anyone wanted some clarifications on anything, and I did include my contact and mine and Akiria's contact information here. If you want to contact us later on.
All right. Well, thank you. And for the rest of the commission on the call, Doris just came in. Doris, we just heard a presentation from staff on the home ownership study preview, and we are now in the questions phase. And we don't have quorum to discuss official business.
Doris, are you on this homeownership subcommittee, or have you been to any of these meetings? I think you'd be excellent. Doris is our housing expert, so I'm bummed you missed a little bit of it.
I best have the head say anything goes bust. In addition,
You want the headset?
just for safety.
Okay, gotcha. I'll give that to you.
Well,
But
while
you
we're
know,
waiting for thoughts Doris might have, I have 2 questions. When you did the homeownership study, I know you're still doing it, but did you have a specific question about whether the homes are disability accessible? And did you have a question about whether funding for modifications to the home for accessibility purposes would be beneficial?
So when you ask, did you have a question? Do you mean, is that part of the conversation? And my answer is, actually, let me, Let me ask that clarifying question before I answer.
Okay. You know what? I was just assuming that there was some kind of survey that you've already done since you started in 2022. So I was wondering if one of the survey questions was about um, the need for a home that's accessible or can be made accessible. Um, uh, as like, you probably asked what are some barriers for you to buying a home. Yeah.
So actually did not do a survey, and the reason for that is just that we've done surveys for other homeownership related initiatives in the past, and just didn't feel like it was necessary for this piece. We did do extensive data analysis through a variety of different data sources. We looked at MRIS data, we looked at HMDA data, some, of course, American Community Surveys. But no, we did not do a survey. I will say that in terms of, the community engagement that we do as part of phase 2 of this study, those are the type of issues that we're definitely, we want to hear about, and we want to hear from the community on what barriers they're currently facing. So, if those are the types of issues that you're seeing when you're, or when you're talking to folks, we would certainly welcome that feedback. Akiria, I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, Caitlin, that was perfect. Yeah, absolutely. We want to hear what the challenges are throughout the county, and so having someone that may be familiar with what those are. Provide information at our the Housing Commission Homeownership Subcommittee meeting, or through other means which can be found again on our website. I think would be certainly very useful.
Yeah, I would say personally is that, the factors and access objective for those who are looking to age in place, but not an access objective to citizens with disabilities. I'm hoping it's just an oversight by the county when they were putting this together in 2015. But I think I say as a commission, or do I have to?
No, let's just keep it to questions. We don't have more, and I don't want this to turn into business, but I'm happy to collect it and then provide it. Yeah.
I would say, okay, let me rephrase that then. Sorry about that.
Sorry, Frank.
My question is the county also looking into working with builders and developers to incorporate universal design principles in the variety of housing units that the county currently has in stock?
Akiria, do you want to take that question and talk maybe a little bit about the ADU program?
Yeah, I can. So the county does, we do obtain units for our affordable dwelling unit program, which are affordable home ownership units. And we get those units through the development process of special exception. We currently have about 62 units in our portfolio throughout the county. So that program is small compared to others, but of course the county is smaller as well. But we currently, again, have 62 units in our portfolio, and right now we have 2 available units in the Axamite Village development. You may have seen this information in the community, but we have 2 available units there, and one of those units, well, both of those units are 2-bedroom units, and they are priced at $369. Both of the units are located on the ground level. One of the 2 units has modifications for physical accessibility. So that's grab bars, lowered doors and faucet handles, lowered counters, and modified storage areas. So when we obtain these units through development, the county wants to get at least one of those units to be modified in some way. But it's a challenge because we can receive that unit, but if we don't have a buyer for that unit, because the units are sold through lottery and they're sold through a random selection lottery, essentially. So that essentially means that whoever wins the lottery to purchase the unit would need to be able to use that accessibility or that accessible unit. We haven't had considerable issues up until now from folks that may not have needed that accessibility. So we are really happy that we have those units throughout our portfolio. The units in our portfolio sell very few and far between. They're not units that have a really high turnover. But we do currently have 2 units that are for sale, and they're brand new units. I'd be happy to provide additional information. If you want to email me or however you want to reach out, be happy to provide that information. But I think throughout this study, yes, I think these are considerations that we really need to think further about and really determine how we can expand or enhance these programs in order to meet the needs of the community. And so having those voices at the table, I think, is really important. It looks like there's a question, Alexa.
Question in the chat.
Yes. Go ahead, Alexa.
Is it possible to, and again, let me know if this is too businessy, but is it possible to rethink that lottery for the accessible units? Because I definitely working in disability related housing issues, it seems like one of the consistent challenges is getting a unit to a person at the right time. It's always, there's always somebody looking for one, and there's one that's just gone, or there's one that's available and there's, people are scrambling to find someone to fill that. And so that added step of the lottery, I just kind of wonder if that might make it harder for those units to get to the people who can use those features.
I think that's something that we can just note. I don't know what the parameters would be there for us to sell those units directly without lottery, but I think it's certainly something that we can just reference for future consideration.
And I also think that, the types of suggestions that we want are, similar things like that for how we can improve our programs, not only to, help people support individuals looking to purchase their home or, who are currently living in their home, but also how we can just get the word out better, and how we can make the process more equitable. So yeah, those types of suggestions are definitely welcome as we sort of get to talking about program recommendations. It looks like there's another question. I'm sorry, I can't see your name.
We have a question in person. Doris?
Oh.
Yes, sir.
And Brian.
Okay, so I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. One of them is that we've had a number of site plan projects that have gone through the Housing Commission. And
hey, Doris, we have to, since we don't have a quorum, the questions have to be related to the presentation, correct?
it is.
I will let Courtney.
It is. I quite understand. Okay. So, well, first thing I guess I want to ask you is, can you say what number of units that you have that are designated affordable or could use, for example, the MyPAP program for purchase? How many of those are condominiums? in multifamily buildings, and how many of them are considered single family, which would be, of course, townhouses, any kind of duplex or a regular single family dwelling. Do you have numbers on that?
Akiria, I think you're muted.
Okay. The reason for asking that question is the Fair Housing Act would cover those units that are multifamily, and whereas townhouses, duplexes, and single-family dwellings are not covered, and the state building code doesn't cover them. But for example, there's a building that's just been built or may still be in the process of being built right here next to the subway station, and there are at least 4 units in there, and it's a condo, it's a purchase. And there are at least 4 units in there, I believe, that are condos that are either 2 or 4, but I think it's 4 that are for purchase and were designated as committed affordable. And so I'm wondering, when projects like that are going up and an agreement is made in the negotiation of the site plan when it goes to the housing division, do you market those units to the disability community, or would you consider doing that so that we know that there are type A, and these are type A units, fully accessible, that are going through? And that are up for purchase.
Yeah, so definitely we try to get the word out. I think there's always an opportunity to expand how and who we are doing that research or that outreach to. I think forums and conversations like this really help us to determine, you know, where we aren't providing that information, and where we can possibly expand our marketing efforts. So I think we are certainly open to get the word to additional outlets. Right now, we use the county website and Now. We have a number of county newsletters that go out that reaches, you know, thousands of citizens. But again, I am more than open to receiving feedback on other outlets for outreach. And then in addition to your other question, I believe the question was, how many of the units in our affordable dwelling unit portfolio are condos? Was that the question?
Our apartment style, you know, multifamily versus single family.
Okay.
And when I say single family, I mean townhouses.
Okay. So we have about 48 condos. We have 7 duplexes and 6 townhomes. And then I think we have like 2 single family units. So as you can see, the majority of our units are condominiums that are used. And MyPAP is the down payment assistance program that can be used to purchase an affordable dwelling unit. But MyPAP can also be used to purchase a market rate unit. So I don't have the information on how many of those of our MyPAP loans have have been used to purchase market rate units that were accessible. But MyPAP can be used for market rate units or for the affordable dwelling units.
And the second question was regarding the form-based code over on Columbia Pike will now require in new construction that that the properties like townhouses and single-family dwellings will be visitable in accordance with the state building code. And so what you were referring to as universal design. So are you guys doing any kind of inventory of those as they come along? Because that's a real considerable step forward for single families to be required to have the visibility features, even if they're 2 or 3 stories like a townhouse.
Okay, and are you referring to affordable dwelling units that come along or just market rate units in general?
They could be both.
Okay, so I cannot speak to any market rate units that become available. I don't want to, mention something that I'm really just not familiar with, but as it relates to the affordable dwelling units, we do not have any affordable dwelling units on the horizon through the neighborhood form-based code as of today. But I think whenever those plans they come to our desk, we're definitely looking at ensuring that we have a number of those units that are accessible. Again, we don't get a lot of these units at all. So typically within one development, we will probably get 4 units, and we again have about a total of 62. And that's really since the inception of the program, which was a very long time ago. So whenever we do get those units between 05 and now, we are definitely trying to ensure that we have affordable dwelling units that are also accessible or would have the ability to be modified.
So we aren't so Eric Teemer isn't keeping a list of those affordable dwelling units as opposed to the CAFs. He's keeping a list of all the CAFs, but not the affordable dwelling units.
I'm not sure. We can check with Eric to see if he's keeping track of that, but and in particular what's going on with as you mentioned the new construction standards on Columbia Pike for based on the form-based code. So we can check on that and get back to you.
And Elizabeth?
Thank you. I just want to have a caveat that I do not know housing issues like Doris does. So pardon my, if it's a question that you have to ask further questions about. But I have been told by others that permitting issues can take a long time and be expensive. And the reason I've been told this is because I'm a homeowner, 25 years, and I have in the position of having to make my home accessible. That's why I know that the program to help with home modifications has been discontinued. But I was thinking, for example, of having to do something like put in a driveway, because there are no curb cuts on my street. So my question is, with permitting and other kinds of issues like that, has that come up as a barrier to home ownership? Or I'm rather thinking about the aging in place prong that you mentioned. And is there any kind of program that would allow people who are seeking permitting to make their homes accessible, whether they could be at the top of the list or get preference, or am I completely off with my permitting question?
No, I mean, it hasn't necessarily come up in our conversations yet, but that doesn't mean that it's not an issue. So, we'll definitely take that down and, keep an eye out for, other comments that we hear about that. I will say that we currently grant fund a program called Rebuilding Together, which does provide accessibility modifications to older adults and persons with disabilities. You have to meet a certain income area. You have to meet a certain area median income level to be able to qualify for that program. But there is that option out there, especially for lower or moderate income homeowners who might not have the ability to make a larger investment to do accessibility modifications to their home. And typically the things that Rebuilding Together does are like grab bars, comfort height toilets. They can even install a ramp into somebody's home if they have mobility challenges. So there are options. It's just limited right now to the one program that I just mentioned.
Okay, and I have to keep this in the phrase of a question. When are any of these on the Arlington website where you search for disability? My experience has been when I search for disability on the Arlington County website, it just goes straight to the DD services. So one of my questions is, have we thought of cross-posing housing, home ownership accommodation issues by programs like yours under the disability programs on the website?
I'm not sure. I'm sorry, there's so much noise coming from somewhere. I'm not really sure where. But I think what your question was whether the programs that we offer, particularly the ones that are available to persons with disabilities, whether it shows up on the disability services site. Okay. I'm not sure. We can definitely check on that and talk with our counterparts at the Department of Human Services and try to get some more information up there. So we'll follow up on that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for that.
All right, any other questions?
Yeah, the other ones. If they can just email it to me and I can.
Yeah, if you have any other questions, of course, email them to Courtney, and I'm gonna start talking, and Courtney, stop me if this is a violation of the rules, but I think we might want to add this to a future agenda.
Well, you can email me.
But
I understand.
Okay, I will note
I'll make a
it.
note.
Yes. Darn that rule. Other than that, Akira and Caitlin, thank you so much for presenting. We'll be in touch soon.
I have one last question before we leave. Sorry, I just now thought of it. Sorry, Brett.
Yeah, no problem.
I understand this is a home ownership study, and there's a person on our committee who often asks questions about rental, how hard it is to rent for people with disabilities on fixed incomes. Is there any kind of similar study, or does your division help with identifying rental costs for individuals who need affordable units?
So I'm having trouble hearing your question, to be honest with you, but just because of all the background noise. But what I think you're asking is if there is another study going on that looks at the rental costs for persons with disabilities. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, or just rental costs in general. I'm trying to represent somebody who's not in the meeting, but she's mentioned many times about how rental costs are high in Arlington.
Yeah, so the county did pass the Affordable Housing Master Plan in 2015. We talked about that a little bit, and the majority of the objectives and goals in the master plan are related to rental housing. It looked at a variety of different issues. And so there are goals in there related to, ensuring that folks have affordable housing. That's the purpose of the plan. But as far as additional studies, I'm not aware of any right now. Kyria, I don't know if you are. But it's obviously it's a huge issue in a place like Arlington that is very high cost, unfortunately. So it's affecting a lot of people.
Well, it's great to know it's in the master plan. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
All right.
Last chance for questions. Going once, going twice. All righty. Well, we look forward to what's to come, and we'll be in touch.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Taxi.
Taxi. All right. So up next, we have a presentation on the potential taxi cab fare rate increase. All right.
Hi, good evening. I hope you can hear me. I echo the background noise. It's a little strong. Good evening. My name is Angie De La Barrera, and I'm with the DES Transportation Planning, and we're here tonight to present the 2023 taxi cab fare. Let me pull up my presentation. All right. I hope you can see it. And with me tonight will be Brian Shelton, who will help me go along with the presentation. The taxi cab ordinance, which is section 25.1 of the Arlington County Code, sets the rates of fare for the taxi cab industry on a biennial basis. The county board approval is required. The county board will hear the request to advertise at the April 22 meeting, and adoption will occur at the May 13 meeting. The last fare increase went in effect in 2016. Currently is $3 a drop and $2.16 per mile. The industry is requesting an increase to adjust to inflation, and they're proposing a $3.50 drop and $2.40 per mile. I just want to give you a quick overview of the numbers per company. Currently, we have 6 companies, and only 2 of those companies have wheelchair accessible vehicles, Blue Top and Red Top. I just want to point out that the total authorized wheelchair accessible vehicles is 39, and the total vehicles, including those wheelchair, is 441. Just as a point of reference, in 2017, we had the highest number. There were 847 authorized vehicles, and out of those, 97 were authorized wheelchair accessible vehicles.
How many?
97 were authorized in 2017. And with that, I'm going to let Brian present the following slides to provide the information to make this recommendation.
Thanks, Angie. So to support the proposed rate increase for taxi cab companies, we pulled consumer price index data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics to note the changes in the cost of doing business as a taxi driver. We also made about 900 observations using the Uber and Lyft app to gauge minimum prices, maximum prices, and typical prices to destinations that are 5, 10, and 25 miles away. That's from 2100 Clarendon Boulevard during the month of January. Starting here with the BLS data, across the board and in line with what we're hearing in the news, really since the start of the pandemic, inflation, supply chain issues, chip shortages, etc., prices are on the rise. You can all see this reflected in the table. Here we pulled the data related to owning and maintaining a taxi cab. And our findings indicate the cost for operators has increased by 38% from the last rate increase in 2016. Some of the largest contributors to the cost increase was the increase in fuel cost, which we calculated at 78%, the increase in insurance costs at 39%, the increase in maintenance and repair costs at 38%, and the increase in the cost of living in 26%. The percent change in the proposed fares for the 5, 10, and 25-mile trips do not necessarily correspond to the percent rise in inflation that we're currently experiencing. However, the new prices will remain competitive with the transportation network companies and operators based in other jurisdictions. The rates will, however, be the most expensive in the region just at the moment. It is important to note here that, like Arlington County, other jurisdictions have not raised their rates in the last 7 to 10 years. We're finding that some jurisdictions are exploring the possibility of increasing their rates as well. For example, Alexandria has recently increased its drop rate, which is the price for getting into the cab, to $4, and they are discussing increasing the distance change or the distance charge later this year. The graph that we have up right now compares the proposed amended Arlington taxi fares with the current fares in the neighboring jurisdictions for those 5, 10, and 25-mile trips. As mentioned in the previous slide, with the proposed initial drop charge and the per mile increase, taxi trips in Arlington will be higher than other jurisdictions for now. The first bar in each of those bins, the 5-mile, 10-mile, and 25-mile, that is the current fare for an Arlington County cab ride at 5 miles, 10 miles, and 25 miles. That second bar there in orange is the proposed fare. And staff also compared the prices of Arlington County taxi fares with other transportation network companies. These are TNCs. These are Uber and Lyft. We simulated service requests over 3 weeks using the cell phone applications to get the numbers that we're presenting to you tonight. Let's see, the minimum rates were the most affordable rates that we observed for Uber and Lyft. Those are the light blue and light orange. Maximum rates were the most expensive rates observed. Those would be the dark blue and the dark orange. And what we noticed is that most maximum rates were offered during the peak commute times. This would be during rush hour, also during the weekend evenings like Friday and Saturday night. And we also noted that special events as well. One of those dates was during the Super Bowl, and what you're looking at are those most expensive rates.
Could you please?
And just to conclude, the county manager's recommendation is to authorize advertisement of a public hearing by the county board on May 14 to consider an increase in the drop from 3 to 3.50 and 1/6 of a mile from 36 cents to 40 cents under Chapter 25.1 of the Arlington County Code. This would be effective July 1st, 2023. And we can go ahead and take any questions.
Could you please verbalize the chart with the prices at the different distances, because some people can't see it?
Sure. You mean
I
for the taxi?
read it some time ago, but I can't.
Sure. So for a 5-mile trip, under current fare would be $13.80. Under the proposal would be $15.50, which is a difference of $1.70. For 10 miles, the current fare would be $24.60, and the proposed will be $27.50, and that's a difference of $2.90. Does that answer your question, Ms. Ray?
Yeah, I think so. What was the third one? 25 miles.
Yeah, 25-mile.
And yeah, and the 25 is $57, and the proposed would be $63.50 for a difference of $6.50.
I have, and I'll start out with the first question. focusing on the accessible taxi cabs, I just want to clarify for the record, you said in 2017, it was 97 wheelchair accessibles.
We we authorized, we had 97 wheelchair accessible.
Okay, so it was authorized, so did the county decrease the authorization amount? I just want some more background on that.
Yeah, sure. So what's happening is basically due to competition with TNCs, the companies, there's a cost associated with each vehicle. So the taxi cab companies cannot keep up with those costs. So, and they're not getting the business they used to have. So they have to renew the license to operate it each year with the county. And so we're finding out that each year they're reducing the number of the license to operate in the county. So in 2017 was the peak, was the last year that was the peak. It was, I think for 2015, 16, and 17, something like that, was that 847 total authorized. Since 2017, we're getting less and less vehicles, including the wheelchair accessible.
And Courtney, stop me if this is we need to have a quorum question. Has the need for accessible taxi cabs decreased? Because, federal regulations, particularly with the STAR program, which also uses red top and blue top, requires service levels comparable to the metro system. So, it just seems like, the county should be making sure that, and another question, is this for just the county? Like, is this the amount of vehicles available within the county, or is this a cross jurisdictional? Like, we share this number with Alexandria, Fairfax.
So I'll start with this question just now. Each jurisdiction has its own taxi cab companies and regulates, because it's regulated under the local level. And so Arlington County regulates this companies. There's a reciprocity agreement, which as if there's either the origin or the destination is in Arlington, you can always use an Arlington County taxi cab. But you cannot use in Alexandria taxi cab to go from Arlington to Arlington or Arlington to DC. So there's that point. Going back to your first question, which I'm sort of blanking out. And I don't, if you can refresh my head.
Does staff collect data on the usage?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we do, it's on our website. We do, so this is a biennial process for the fare increase on odd number years, the even number of years. We look at the number of certificates, and so the report is there, and we provide data on the usage for the last 3 years. Unfortunately, it's been COVID, so all the numbers were heavily, I believe it was in the 73, 74% down for the wheelchair accessible requests. So it's not a good gauge, but it's, and another thing regarding the START program, the county will absorb this costs under the START program. So the increase will go to the county, not the START riders. START not only uses Arlington County taxi cabs, but they also use Diamond Transportation, which has actually increased the number of wheelchair accessible vehicles, but it's not a taxi cab, so it's off our regulations. So that's a different type of business. And I believe I might have answered all your questions.
Yes, currently, and one more question, then I'll go to Doris. Is the county considering any financial support to ensure that service providers are able to attain wheelchair accessible cabs? I did a brief research on this, and they are they're more expensive than the standard vehicles. Has staff considered programs for assistance?
So I completely recognize that, and all the policies that we try to put forth in the county, it's always to facilitate the taxi cab companies to maintain and keep those wheelchair accessible vehicles. There's not such thing as you were saying, but what we've done, for example, so during COVID, you know, this certificate, this annual renewal fee, it was $150 per vehicle in the past during the COVID, and because we wanted to maintain the level of service, especially for the wheelchair accessible, we lowered it to $50 per vehicle, but free for wheelchair accessible vehicles. So they wouldn't have to pay anything to keep the license for wheelchair accessible. Other things we've done is because of the vehicles are really expensive. A couple years ago, we changed the years of service. The industry was asking to move from 10 years of service to 12 years of service for the vehicles. And we decided to not only grant that for all vehicles, but for wheelchair accessible, if we moved it to 15 years. So they would get additional years of service, or they can buy used vehicles because they would have longer usage for the company. So we've been trying to facilitate things and create policies that will maintain wheelchair accessible vehicles in the county.
But nothing like a loan program like the county currently offers for like homeownership.
No, there's no such thing. No, this is, and again, this is a private business too. We regulate what they charge and so on, but I'm not sure the authority we would have under that.
Yeah, that was more of just
and we do have STAR. Yeah. Correct. We do have the STAR program to help the people get to places.
Yeah, so the loan question was more of a exploratory personally. But,
okay.
Well, good.
I mean, it's. I'll take the idea. I'll take the idea. But like I just want to point out that we are always looking at ways to facilitate the companies to keep and maintain those vehicles, the wheelchair accessible vehicles.
Understandable. Right. Doris, go ahead.
Yeah, and I do have a couple of questions because I am a dedicated taxi user. Back in 16, when we had the 97 authorized wheelchair accessible vehicles, it's my recollection that as a result of county board action, wheelchair accessible vehicles were added to the fleets of Blue Top, and 50 of the certificates were issued to All Access Taxi, which was about to start up. Is that your understanding?
Correct. So if I recall from that year, it was 5 to Blue Top, 5 to Red Top, and 50 to All Access.
Yeah, and the 50 to All Access went under pretty quickly, and they never used those vouchers, right? So the reality is that we didn't have actually 50 vehicles from one taxi cab company out there on the street.
Correct. So the key word here is
there was never actually as many as 97 wheelchair accessible taxis out there on the street.
So All Access it was a startup, and I believe they got all the way to 10, 12 wheelchair accessible vehicles. It was a time where the companies were reporting hard to hire drivers. Because they were going to.
Well, actually, what I understood, because we were working with them at the time, that they required the drivers to
purchase.
They would help them get financing, but it had to be a driver-owned vehicle.
Correct. It was multiple of things. It was hard to hire people, but I was going to get to that. Their model was for the driver to purchase and retrofit all these vehicles.
Yeah, right.
And it didn't work out,
Didn't
correct.
work
And they were trying to build the business where they talk to the airports and they talk to hospitals,
So the question
but
is,
not enough.
did the certificates disappear, or
So
did
so
other
you have to,
companies not use them?
so you have to renew each year, and then they can renew for less number of certificates for
So the
vehicles.
number of certificates out there now is
It's what the companies are paying to have as authorized to operate. But really,
so
Yeah, go ahead.
like Red Top has what is it, 20 or something?
20. Mhm.
So and at one time they had 30. So
I think at one time, I think the highest they had was 29.
So that's one thing I wanted to ask you about. The other is I'm curious about. I know that the companies are using their certificates and they're purchasing the wheelchair accessible vehicles directly, right? The companies themselves, and they're using them for the dual purpose of, running paratransit rides as well as running regular rides. Right?
Correct. I mean, they would, if they don't have a current an accessible trip, they can definitely use the vehicle for other type of transportation.
I wasn't sure because my understanding is they had to return them because of problems with the drivers taking the wheelchair accessible vehicles home. And that was a big issue for Star about when people were able.
Yeah. My only concern is if the vehicle's been retrofitted to a certain degree, there might not be enough seats in those vehicles to, like, say, transport 5 or 6 people. I don't know, but
So you guys aren't tracking anything like that so that we could get a handle on
what we track, and it'll be next year in the certificate report. We do request the companies to give data on how many disability trips they had dispatch the previous 3 years. And like I said, so when we looked at it last year, it was a huge decrease, mainly due to the pandemic.
Yeah, but one of the things that I'm also concerned about is whether you are looking at the fact that right now, since 17 or 18, Red Top and the Red Top and the yellow cabs from all the surrounding jurisdictions, Fairfax, Alexandria, Prince William, were bought up into one company, which now, at least in some circumstances, trades as Old Dominion Taxi. And when they did that, they also sold off, at least Red Top sold off their centralized reservation center, here in Clarendon, and they went to remote reservations. At one time, some company in Minneapolis, and last I heard was Pittsburgh, and a computer is running the order of taking the calls, and there's no more system of taxi stands that would bring the closest cab to you. So in fact, when you call a taxi on a regular taxi ride, you might be getting somebody who accepts the job and is up in Fair Oaks and has to get to you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm wondering if you, in deciding to increase or allow for a rate increase to the taxi rider, what kind of consideration are you giving to the fact that right now, even on weekday evenings at like 8 o'clock in the evening, you have to wait 1-2 hours to get a taxi, which was never the case, before the takeover. And that actually, you are getting, I've gotten taxi rides from Prince William cabs up here. And so, my concern is that you're going to increase rates, and many people with disabilities, particularly blind people like me, or anybody who doesn't drive because of their disability, is going to be stuck with paying higher rates for what I would call lousy service. And if you guys are the hacker authority, then why isn't that being considered? Because I remember reading the ordinance, and there are some performance standards in there. Am I correct, or maybe they're right?
So the hack office has barely received any complaints, actually, I should say, because I do check with him, and I think he got one last year. But going back to some of the points you were making, because of the TNCs are taking a big bite of their budget, or their money in this case, for taxis.
Like TNC.
So we're basically going to the lower common denominator and reducing they got rid of all the call center. They got rid of a lot of stuff. Red Top used to employ about 1,500 people in this area, and they had to, go to minimum because just to reduce costs, just to keep things down to be able to compete with Uber and Lyft. One of the things now, and they didn't want to increase the rates for this past 7 years because they wanted to keep this competition with Uber and Lyft, but they're not being able to attract drivers. That they're going to other jobs that are paying a lot more money. So it's just a kind of like one of those things that, they need an increase to hopefully attract more drivers. So hopefully you'll get a better service. But the point is they haven't got an increase since 2016. And especially in this past couple years, we know how much the cost of living has increased. And drivers, they also have to make ends meet, and they're going to jobs that pay them more.
So the last thing I want to ask you is, do you have the numbers on the fees and the fees that the drivers have to
Pay the companies?
incur on a weekly basis for renting the cars, renting the dispatch, any kind of maintenance and insurance, and all of that? Because certainly I hear from drivers a whole lot about how much money that is and how little they're making off the rides, and maybe that's the reason that they pulled out.
Yeah, so that's what we're hearing, and we pulled the data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and like Brian was saying, that's an increase of 38% in this past 7 years. They're only looking at an increase of 11 to 12%. So again, a very modest increase, not keeping up with the inflation that we are seeing.
All right, we're going to move on to Suzette.
Thank you for letting me ask.
Yeah, no problem.
I was just wondering, when you said the reports happen, as to if the reports ever include the fact that when I'm in a wheelchair, several times taxi cabs can't pick me up because the wheelchair weight limit and the taxi cab don't mix well. So was wondering that when the county sees the statistic, is that also reported when the taxi cab company leaves me at the side of the road because the vehicle that they sent doesn't fit the wheelchair?
You mean for dispatch trips?
Or
I'm not
even when they ask you on the phone and they say like, you know, I'm in a 500-pound wheelchair, and they like, we can't pick you up. We don't have the vehicle to do that. So just wondering if that's a part of any of your statistics.
No, we look at the overall. I mean, when we ask for dispatch trips, I take what they give me, but in reality, there's no right or wrong. I mean, if they're applying for more certificates, which has not been the case, they would want those numbers to be really high, but they haven't been applying for any certificates. So there hasn't been a need for them to increase or decrease those numbers for any reason. So we just have to go with what they give us.
Is there a way to convince the county to work with them to gain vehicles or a variety? Because Uber and Lyft do not provide vehicles, right, that my wheelchair can go into, right? Like that's just a fact.
Correct.
So the county doesn't sound like you are supporting these companies to also provide the alternative method of transportation, because several times I find myself just in my wheelchair, using my wheelchair on streets where policemen get mad at me because there's things blocking the sidewalks. And so I'm in traffic in my wheelchair because there's no other way to get where I need to go, right? Because the buses don't
Sure.
do those last miles, right? And taxi cabs don't allow my wheelchair to go there. So I guess that's my kind of consideration
Sure.
when you guys are thinking about this.
If you can send Courtney the specifics, because I'm not aware, I wasn't aware of this issue. And I'll see, I can talk to the industry and make sure they get qualified vehicles for your situation. At this point, that's at least make them aware of that there's citizens that require a specific type of vehicle. For that, do you work with START program or anything? I just don't know if the Diamond Transportation has anything that we can look at or anything that you're aware of.
I mean, there's lots of programs, but when you've got that last minute kind of thing, like, tonight, my wheelchair wasn't charged enough for me to take it on the streets to get there. And I couldn't call a taxi cab to get to the meeting that would show up that can carry my wheelchair also, right? And by the time you figure that out, the bus also won't get me to the meeting on time. So then I become stuck because there's just not the mechanism to get me where I want to go.
Sure, if you can pass Courtney those kind of requirements, I'll definitely let the industry know.
Alexa?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I just wanted to ask that the issue that's driving this proposed increase in fares is, am I right that it's an attempt to attract more drivers? Because it seems like a lot of the issues that I'm seeing folks bring up to me, for example, bringing up issues with the STAR program and things like that. It seems like the issue is that there just aren't enough cabs. And so I'm wondering if that's what this is about. And do we have any idea or prediction or anything on how much this might help to improve that issue or issues like that? Or is that not something that we could make a guess at? Or
Sure. So this was a request from the industry. So it wasn't us that said, hey, we need to increase. This was a request from the industry. We did our homework looking at the cost of living, look at the Uber and Lyft and so on and so forth. So the industry, what they told us was, hey, we can't attract drivers. They're getting paid more working, at service commercial areas. And we can't attract them because you guys, the county, set the rates and we can't, they don't make any money So we give them several options and they pick the 3 to 350 and the 216 to 240 as they felt that was significant enough for them. But still they want to continue to be competitive. And as Brian was showing, in the short distance, they're very competitive. Those prices would be cheaper than Uber and Lyft for the most part. But on the longer trips, they will not, mainly because Uber and Lyft has that dynamic pricing. And so they can adjust, with the app, they can adjust that as they go. But the county sets the rates, and it doesn't matter if you go 1 mile or if you go 25 miles. So they're not going to be as competitive for the Dallas airport runs, for example. I hope that answers your question. I mean, they are the ones bringing us this issue to us. We just did our homework to support if there was data enough to support that, which we think there is with the inflation and so on. Doris? Or Suzanne? Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, my understanding is that there's no regulation on the operation of the rideshare business. In fact, that Uber in particular, but also the others, made sure that the state would not allow localities to regulate them. And therefore, there's really no comparison between the rideshare business and the taxi business from that perspective, right?
So that is correct. DMV regulates Uber and Lyft. We tried, but they removed us from localities to regulate Uber and Lyft at the local level. And what we're seeing is really a race to the bottom. That's really what we're seeing. The county's trying to do its best to making sure there's especially the wheelchair accessibility transportation, because as mentioned, Uber and Lyft do not have that requirement.
Are you tracking, for example, the wait time for taxis in Arlington on different days?
No, we wouldn't have any source for that to track.
So you don't protect the customer, you only set the rates for the taxis.
So we are protecting the customer by looking at, we have certain things like the rates, the stands, there's still stands. We do have an ordinance to protect the consumer and regulate a private industry and set certain things. But we don't have the call center or anything where the calls will come in for us to dispatch taxis. We don't have that to know. If there's a complaint mechanism that goes to our HOC office, and it's been pretty quiet too along, since the TNCs kind of took off. So that's how.
Right, back to Suzette.
Just one more question. Has the county ever considered either a debit card or some kind of reimbursement program because I know that I'm on a fixed income, being a disabled veteran, like I only make. So was wondering that if this increase then further allows me not to use a service, whether or not that's a possibility, or how this committee could encourage the county to create, a debit card or a subsidy kind of system for disabled people.
So the only thing I know, it's the START program. Maybe something channeled through the what is it, the Transit Accessibility Subcommittee, as the funds would have to be allocated and so on. I'm not sure. We don't we just regulate the ordinance and making sure that things are balanced, but we don't have a specific budget. We don't have any funds. We don't get funds from anywhere. And
Yeah. Yeah, to that, well, before I say what I'm about to say, any last questions? So I think based upon the conversation, this, if I can say this, Courtney, if our April agenda is not too busy, if we can add this as a further discussion topic, I think that'd be more productive to us as a commission, so we can follow up with the taxi cab. What's your official department again? Sorry.
We're in the transportation planning under DES.
All right. We'll follow up with Department of Transportation within DES shortly, but I do want to be cognizant of the time. We're almost at the 2-hour mark. But if there's no other questions, Angie, Brian, thank you so much for taking some time to go over the proposed.
I'm sorry, quick question. So for the next agenda, what would be, it would be this topic, or are you looking to make a recommendation to the board? I'm sorry, I'm not sure I followed.
Yeah, due to state law, we cannot discuss this officially, so we're just
because of the quorum. Okay,
yes.
got it. Okay. I just want to make sure it wasn't part of our end that we, okay.
Oh, no, yeah, if we have any other questions, we'll communicate through Courtney.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good night.
All right. Well, since there's no other presentations and we don't have a quorum, meeting adjourned. Hopefully we can get one in April.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you guys, do you mind? I'm sorry, Brian.
Yeah.
I just wanted to explain why I wasn't there. I was absolutely planning to be there, and I wrenched my knee last evening, and so I'm going out of town tomorrow. So I really just felt like I needed to rest my knee. I just wanted to explain because I would normally have been there, and I'm sorry to leave folks who came all the way in the lurch. So that's why I'm not there.
Oh, no problem. The failure